Hey, everybody, welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who live in New York and love the Cubs now more than ever. Feels like 2020 again. Now more than ever. We love the Cubs, don't we, folks? I'm Adam Amawala. I'm here with Kevin McCaffrey, and I got to say, the vibes are largely pretty damn good.
Vibes are good. I would say if ever dates back about 3 or 4 weeks, I would agree. I definitely love the Cubs more than I've ever loved them this August for sure, and the things are going pretty good. They just they as we're recording this, they just beat the Mets 3-2, little comeback job.
Step right up and beat the Mets.
Yes, everybody's doing it this season. Beat a lot of the players right off that team, and do not mark this episode as explicit for me phrasing it that way, but that did literally happen. So it was particularly fun. Yesterday was kind of an encapsulation of so many of the things that have gone right lately in terms of Mike Tauchman coming through. Mike Tauchman showing oppo center power in a stadium that's like not that easy to do that.
No. Yeah, that got out by a wide margin. Like that almost got out to where the wall used to be.
Mm-hmm, right, exactly. And then Cody Bellinger, obviously, doing his patented sort of lefty golf swing that just easily lifts the ball over the fence. And then Adbert Alzolay coming in to shut it down in a one of my favorite Adbert saves of the year, really, coming in with a 1-run lead, and all the games really matter now. And that is different from earlier in the year when Adbert first took over the closer role, I feel like. You know, this is is like playoff pressure, even if the Mets aren't a playoff caliber team.
It is, and I have to tell you, I was at the game last night, and I guess as a Cubs fan, there's some amount of like built-in PTSD just wherever you are. But I believe you as well, have seen the Cubs get walked off at Shea/Citi Field way more times than feels like a normal mathematical amount.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt it big time. I was like, no. Like as soon as Lindor singled, I was like, is Pete Alonso going to fucking walk us off right now? I'm going to be so annoyed. The number of times, I mean, we call this show Away Games because that is largely games that you and I have attended. The number of times that I've been the person just like sitting in a seat sadly while an entire stadium erupts around me and I just have to slink out as people yell things at me. It's just there's definitely some trauma from that.
Big time. And especially because since I think that Lindor single was on a 2-strike count too, it just feels so frequently when we've been walked off, and by we, I mean like when you and I have been there physically in person, it has been just on the cusp of winning and never quite being able to get it done time and time again. So it really had all the elements of what's been going good for this team this year. And recently, Jameson Taillon coming through and outside of Pete Alonso pitching great, you know? I mean, he has been really good for a little while now.
Well, yeah, it was kind of cool for me because I was at that game at Yankee Stadium. That was kind of the beginning of his renaissance, as it were, where he had that incredible performance that basically broke the Yankees, I think, and like caused them to fire their hitting coach that weekend. Like
yes,
I believe he
and replace him with Sean
yeah.
Casey. They're just like, find me a broadcaster, and then just shoved him right in there.
Hard hitting Sean Casey.
Yeah.
And by the way, if we do say anything even remotely negative about the Cubs, please don't suspend us, Baltimore.
Oh my God! Do not Kevin Brown us, please. Yeah, I think people have seen that, but Kevin Brown, not the rage-filled pitcher. Yeah. This is a broadcaster for the Orioles who seems pretty universally beloved in the broadcasting community. Just noted that the Orioles had lost 15 straight series, I think it was, to the Rays. Yeah. And the Orioles as a team suspended him. It's fucking numbers. It's stats.
Like, yeah, and it was in the context of saying like, this has been a really good series.
Yeah.
They have struggled in the past. It is the baseball equivalent of someone in China like tweeting something about the government. Like that is an insane draconian level of censorship of someone. Like, he wasn't insulting the players, he wasn't insulting the organization, he was merely pointing out that they have struggled against a particular team in their division.
This is Angelos ownership. I mean, the Angelos family, the Baltimore chased out a absolute Hall of Fame broadcaster in John Miller for similar reasons. John
Hmm.
Miller called what was in front of him, and that was offensive to the Orioles ownership. And when you spend as low as the Orioles have for a decade and a half, you should be embarrassed. Things are going great for them this season. It's a fun young team, and that is credit almost 0% to the ownership there. It is the baseball operations group that has been so good there. And also when you're drafting 1 and 2 every year, that certainly
Right.
helps. That's how you get an Adley Rutschman behind the
Hmm.
plate. But yeah, that was pretty goofy shit.
Yeah, insane. But anyway, we're getting off track. The point is, like, yeah, I think last night is a perfect encapsulation of what the Cubs have done well, which is that they've played good defense. That was, I believe, that was Kevin closing a window.
Hmm.
Uh, for anyone at home saying what happened there.
Yeah, well, who's
Um,
screaming?
but yeah, good defense. Even at the end, like Adbert fields that ball from Vogelback, throws. He took his time, but threw like a pretty low throw to Swanson, who
Hmm.
just perfectly like cradled it, took his time, threw to first. And I don't know if Vogelback had made it out of the box, frankly. Um,
I don't know how Vogelbach gets home. Like, does he just have to sleep at the ballpark if this is the speed at which he moves when there is some sort of a rush to get to first base? Because I know he's a big boy, but big boys can move faster than that. I really
he
feel like
makes he makes final season Albert Pujols look like D. Gordon.
I need to see the sprint numbers on that. And obviously, we love a big boy who hits dingers. That's great. We love a big boy who returns to us, Mike Montgomery, in a trade to end
Hmm.
the 2016 World Series, as Dan Vogelbach did. But good Lord, like, you gotta at least hustle something, because as you say, the throw could have gotten away there,
Yeah,
but he wasn't halfway down the line by the time that ball got to first. So
yeah. But I mean, as we're recording this now, we've come off a very 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 impressive series against the I believe best record in the league, Atlanta Braves. Not even the league in all of baseball. Getting kind of smacked around on Friday after Hendricks had a rough inning, but then winning on Saturday and Sunday. Great, excuse me, great crowds both days, despite the rainy and crappy weathers. This is after winning, because I think the last time we recorded, I guess the Cubs would have maybe split the first two in Cincinnati, or that was like after their first loss. So winning 3 of 4 against Cincinnati, that's always huge. Like in those 4 game
mhm.
sets, going 3-1 versus splitting is a 2 game difference.
It's huge.
So
It's
yeah,
huge, especially in your division with the team with one of the two teams you're most directly competing with in this scenario. That was exactly what they needed to do. And honestly, if the Cubs went 1 and 3 against the Braves, I would have said that was a good series. But
yeah.
but taking 2 of 3 was tremendous, and as it sits right now, the Cubs are 1.5 games back of Milwaukee for the division and tied and one better in the loss column than Cincinnati as we speak right now. And then if you go over to the wild card standings, the Cubs are, as of now, they would have the final wild card spot. I mean, there's a difference in games played, but they are 0.001 percentage points ahead of Cincinnati for the last wild card spot. So yeah, currently they're in the playoffs of all things.
It is pretty wild, and I think the thing that's been really encouraging about this group, especially offensively, is that I believe so. Kind of what I consider to be, other than after that Angels series loss when the Cubs fell to 10 under, um, when the Cubs went on that slide after the Mancini incident, and then kind of culminated, they lost that first game against Washington. They're down 3-0 against Washington that second night before they score the 17 runs. And I'm pretty sure during that game I tweeted like, I hate how insurmountable being down 3-0 feels.
Mm-hmm.
And really, since that moment, it has been a complete shift where when the Cubs go down early, you're just not that shaken by it. Like whether it's yesterday only being down 2-0, or I'm forgetting if it was Saturday or Sunday, but like that one game against the Braves, they it was like every time they got down, they would come back and score the same amount that very inning.
Mm-hmm.
And that is such a huge and encouraging thing when we've seen that game against the White Sox where the Cubs were down 7-2 and came all the way back. And when we look forward to what could potentially be a playoff run, like you need to have that kind of makeup to get anywhere in the playoffs. Like if you go down 3-0 in the first inning in the playoffs, then you just throw your hands up and say like, well, I guess we're screwed. You're going to be out before you got there.
Yeah, and I think what the Cubs lineup has become is annoying. It's
Right.
annoying
Yeah.
top to bottom. Everyone's kind of annoying to pitch to in
Hmm.
here. And this is also, there's been sort of a distinct change in how we're going forward from this point in terms of lineup construction and that kind of thing, and just who's playing really more than lineup construction. David Ross was quoted saying, "This is not a time to get people there at bats. We're not worried about that anymore. This
Hmm.
is you are just playing fully the best team you can every time." And that means Seiya Suzuki does not play. And that's what it means at this point. And that is, that's maybe troublesome for the
Yeah.
roster going forward if Seiya is not one of your starters. But he shouldn't be right now because you need to get Mike Tauchman in the lineup. You need to get
Hmm.
Jamer in there. And if you have Nick Madrigal, if Jamer's not at third, Nick Madrigal is, and sort of that chain reaction of things makes it so Seiya's on the bench right now. And
Right.
Seiya's a guy who obviously he's got the physical ability, he's got he has the ability, but he just hasn't done it this year, and
Hmm.
he needs some sort of a reset. My only quibble with the lineup lately is the Cubs keep hitting Nico Horner like as a number two hitter, as if this
He's
is
an
night.
eight. He's an eight or
He's an
nine. I
eight.
don't get it. Yeah.
This is like we're hitting him in the two hole as if this is 1992, and you
Right.
this is the kind of guy you
Jeff Blauser ass.
Bowser has to laying down bunt ass contact, whatever contact, but regardless of contact quality, Nico Horner is this year at a 98 weighted runs created plus. That means he's 2% worse than league average as a hitter
Hmm.
on the whole. Now he's also worth 3 wins above replacement because he's been so good defensively, and I love that he's added the base stealing element to his game to this
Yeah.
degree this year. That's been really great. But to me, get that guy in the 9 hole if you want a guy with speed ahead of the lineup if he gets there, or as you say, an 8. He just
Yeah. Give me like Horner eight, Madrigal nine, or vice versa,
yeah,
and I'm not going to complain.
and move Jamer up, please,
Hmm.
and move Chris Morel up, because as we're talking about how Nico has maybe been a little worse than it even feels like offensively.
Hmm.
We are at a point where Christopher Morel, it's almost like when a guy, it was never really like a top 100 prospect type. He came up and he did better than we expected, and then he sort of slumped a bit. I think it's hard to really commit to being like, is he this good? We're getting to a point where this is just a really good hitter. This is the second or third best
Hmm.
hitter on the Cubs. He's at 130 weighted runs created plus, 30% better than league average, 17 homers this year. I mean, slugging over 500 out of the DH role. And I think going forward, and this is a thing to worry about next year, you probably want to find Morel somewhere on the field where he can play and have someone else in there DHing. But
Hmm.
this is a guy who the at bat that I want to point at as to how far he's come is the bases loaded walk he took
Yeah.
this week. If Morel can just do exactly that in high pressure
Hmm.
positions, working at bat like that, and lay off balls outside the zone, I this is just, you got to put that guy higher in the lineup
Hmm.
too. So
Yeah, I mean, I would actually love to. We'll hit up our friends at the Elias Sports Bureau. Maybe there's some recency bias. I feel like there have been numerous big spots recently, just in the past few weeks, where Morel has gone from 0-2 to a
Mhm.
walk or to doing something productive, and turns what looks like it might be. I don't want to denigrate anyone, like kind of an old school Javi at bat, where you're like, oh, you weren't even up there,
Right,
to something that is like,
a
even if
present
he
day
looks
Seiya Suzuki
bad.
at bat.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
right.
good comp. Like,
Yeah.
even if he looks bad or off balance the first two swings, or gets fooled, he finds a way to like take that deep Wilson Contreras breath and like
Hmm.
stand in there and not bite at stuff. That's no good. And I think that is, like, besides the power, besides anything else, that is the most impressive evolution I think that we've seen from Morel this year, and it makes me think that like he very much could be a part of this team's future. Like, I agree with you that ultimately you're going to want to find somewhere for him to be, because I don't know that you want someone who's so like youthful as your DH all the time. I think you'd
Well,
rather utilize it for people who either like truly can't play the field or need some time off. Have Gomes there or whoever is not catching that day.
I think this is, as we say, future worries, I guess. But yeah, you just want big numbers in the DH, and either you want it to be someone who probably has to be there. Obviously, like you
Mhm.
think Shohei, you think If you swing a deal for Pete Alonso, that's a guy who might DH sometimes too, right? So, and I think it's a good problem with Morel because Morel has not been good defensively in a lot of spots. He's been very good at second when he's
Mhm.
played there, but we know Nico's there at second, and I still believe he can be okay at third. He just hasn't really shown it at the major league level, but he just has so much pure athleticism, great arm strength that this is a guy who I think in the offseason they will have to look at. Let's get Morel focused on, on
Mhm.
maybe a position to really click into this year.
Well, let me give you a comp, right? I mean, think
Yeah,
about Ian Happ early on, right? They had
sure.
Happ in the infield a lot, then they had him at second, then they had him at third occasionally. They had him, I think, at first base very rarely,
Yeah.
and then playing center, and he would just bounce around. And I think it was like, look, there are some people like Ben Zobrist who can do that and they
Hmm.
excel. Um, but I think that's the anomaly. I think most people need to be focusing on one position. We're talking about Major League Baseball here. This is not a softball league. Like
It's not a
if you
video
want
game. Yeah.
people, yeah, if you want people to be good, they need to be getting the reps in. And look at what Ian Happ has become defensively. When I think early on it was kind of a liability, especially when he was in the infield. So I
He
think
came up
if
as a second
he,
baseman. You drafted as a
yeah,
second baseman.
so
Yeah.
to your point, if the Cubs can find that for Morel, and he can develop that, I think that will go a long way. And now the other thing that I wanted to talk about, Jamer Candelario. Look, I don't want to go too crazy when we're talking about 8 games here, but we're looking at like a Nick Castellanos level acquisition here
Hmm.
if this continues. So in 8 games since joining the Cubs, um, Candelario has had 29 at bats. He's had 14 hits in those 29 at
Hmm.
bats. So basically 500 batting average. He's OPSing 1300 right now.
Sure. 2004
Which,
Barry Bonds. Yeah.
yeah, again, it's not. It would be insane to think that that's going to continue. But when you look at the Cubs lineup, especially like pre Candelario and post,
Mhm.
having Swanson back, having Bellinger back, and adding someone like Candelario, and also someone who can play both first and third. And I don't think he's like elite at either position, but he's pretty good. It's a huge acquisition.
Yeah, and I'd have to look at the numbers, but I think he's pretty solid at third base too. I think he
More so
is.
than first. I like him
Yeah.
there more than at first, for
Yeah, and he
sure.
just as we said last episode, that he just hadn't played first base since I think 2020. I want to say it is,
Right.
and for we stick a lot of big boys over at first because they can't be other places. It doesn't
Right.
make it an easy position to play though. There's a
No.
lot going on over there. You're involved in just a lot of plays, and especially like scooping those throws out of the
Mhm.
dirt is something you just need reps on. Like there's just
Yeah, I
there's.
mean, other than catching, what position is more involved more
Mhm.
frequently?
Right. Yeah, in terms of greatest number of plays. So I think Jamer, in a perfect world, you have over at third, but that's and what we were talking about Morel in terms of adjusting to a new position and learning how to get up to speed, get up to average and above. Nick Madrigal's a great example of someone who did that, right? I mean, this is a guy who was
Mhm.
drafted as a shortstop. Everyone was pretty sure would be a second baseman, and then we did not think he could play third going into the season. He's played it very well. Doesn't matter
Right.
that he has to, even if he's running a 5K across the infield before he throws it sometimes, who gives a shit? He has figured it out
Mhm.
how to be a plus defender over there, and so you can look at that as something that maybe we can get Morel working on the offseason. But to your Jamer point, yeah, this guy's sitting here with a 3.7 WAR this season on Fangraphs, and yes, he's on pace for his best season overall in that sense. Last year was a big down year. He was basically flat zero replacement level. The year before that, though, he was a 3.9. Year before that, 1.9. He put up a
Mhm.
2.2 before that. Jamer he's had two sort of aberration years, but he's just a good player. And this is a guy who in this lineup, I think, is helpful in his match for how annoying he is. He's mostly
Mhm.
doubles power, but he's a switch hitter. I think for his career, he's even been better as a righty hitter
Yeah.
against left-handers, and he just fits this lineup so great. And yeah,
Jamer's a gamer.
gamer's a
Give me that
gamer.
obvious shirt.
And you're happy to see him up in any. And what's the move, Adam? I'm doing it on the video here. When he gets on base, he does it at some. Where is this like a Doctor Strange move? Is
Yeah,
that
no one knows. I'm not sure if it's is it like a wax on, wax off? Is it a Doctor Strange? No one really. There's a lot of that going on, and then there's a little bit of a turning the ignition when guys come around third base on a home run.
Right. Yeah. I think this is a, we could let's get the journalists in there asking what's up over there. But yeah, Jamer's been he's just been a great acquisition, and he is someone who I think Patrick Mooney was going as far as saying he would be surprised if he's not a Cub next year. He's an unrestricted free agent,
Hmm.
but obviously he came up with the Cubs organization, and he this is the first time in I mean, he's been playing on Detroit and then Washington since the
Hmm.
Cubs traded him away. So this is a guy who hasn't been in a game that mattered in terms of
Yeah.
playoff implications
Hmm.
since his 14 plate appearances in 2016.
Yeah,
So
and he
it's
seems like a great fit. It seems like he's like
yeah.
gelling with the guys already. And it was, I don't know if you listened to Jed Hoyer's press conference about the trade deadline, but one of the things that he mentioned, I forget if it was a presser or when he was like in the box with Boog and JD, but in any case, one thing that he mentioned was like they had a very good experience with Candelario as a young guy. And in doing some of their reconnaissance, wanted to ask around in terms of like Detroit and Washington, like, hey, just checking in, like, are the vibes still good? Is he
Mhm.
still the guy that we knew 5, 6 years ago? And apparently, the intel they got was like, he's great, like personality wise, fit wise, and obviously on the field, he's exactly the kind of person you would want on your team. So,
And he just seems, he just, I mean, it's literally just looking at facial expressions and body language, I guess, as far
mhm.
as what we're watching on TV. But he just looks like a guy who's having fun and who other people are enjoying too,
Yeah,
in that way. So I think that is, he couldn't have more positive returns so far, obviously.
yeah,
And even if he's not hitting 500, even if
right.
he doesn't hit 500 the rest of the year, then this is, still, this is like, it's a clear win of a trade to me.
Yeah, no question about it. And I mean, obviously, I don't think we're going to spend too much time looking forward to next year, at least not yet. But if they can, and I apologize for the siren here, but I'm going to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
If they can re-sign Bellinger and Candelario, and then add some starting pitching, I
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of what you need to do. Like, I'm not saying that that would be in obviously in a dream world you sign Otani, but like realistically, I think that even if those two players offensively stay on the Cubs, that's a huge deal.
I would say that plus getting a package together of this much vaunted minor league depth that we've
Mhm.
talked about. You need to do a good job as the organization who has worked with these players, make the correct predictions on which ones to keep and which ones can
Mhm.
be packaged for a deal, and then go get one more very big bat, an
Right.
Alonso type, something like that. Packaging three or four prospects, a lot of us, I'm sure, enjoy. But yeah,
Right.
I think what you said plus that, now we're talking
Because does
about a team acting
Alonso
like the Cubs, maybe
does he only have
one
he's
year.
not a free agent until so he's got like a year and a half basically
Yeah,
left.
it's starting from
Yeah.
now. Yes, so
Right.
he's under contract for next year, and then
Hmm.
unrestricted free agent after that.
I mean, he mashes at Wrigley. He mashes everywhere, but and he's
Hmm.
certainly done some damage against the Cubs
Right.
this this week. But I would say in terms of negative stuff, obviously Stroman has continued to struggle. He's now on the IL, and honestly, like I hope that it's a real IL stint rather than a phony one, which we've
Hmm.
also seen sometimes. Because like if he is actually hurt, that makes me feel less concerned about how truly egregiously bad he's been.
Yeah. Well, and
But
supposedly
yeah,
he received a cortisone injection, so
yeah,
that's something.
right. But I think the big concern now, especially as we look at Monday's game, which I am very grateful I was not attending, Drew Smiley has been he has now become what Taillon was the first half of the season, where you're like, can we run this guy out there every five
Yeah,
days?
and what Stroman was in July,
Right.
it's been a bit of a game of, and what Wisniewski was to begin the year. So
Hmm.
it's been a bit of a game of musical chairs among these guys as far as like who is like an automatic loss when they go out there lately, and it's tough with Smiley. I mean, I do. This is a guy who has had was very good all last year, was
Hmm.
very good for the first half of this year, and I don't think I haven't like seen anything physically with him that makes it seem like, oh, he's fully broken or anything. But yeah, I think you can't really be starting him right now in the way
Hmm.
that Seiya Suzuki's taken a seat, right?
Right.
The difference is with Suzuki, we had a clear upgrade,
Hmm.
clear other way to make the lineup stronger, and I don't think the Cubs clearly have that right now, right? In terms of who to replace him with. Javier Assad's had put some good innings up there. I think you just kind of have to combo some sort of an Assad Wisniewski in his place, and then Drew Smiley has to be the guy that eats up innings in games that are sort of handled
I
already.
mean, you have to turn him into what Mike Montgomery became, kind of.
Yeah, I think that's actually a pretty good comp for how to use him
Yeah.
for right now, at least I think. And you're going to need those innings because the Cubs just don't have that many relievers to really count on in high leverage situations, and those
Mhm.
relievers need those bullets saved for when they, for, for when they really matter. So Smiley can still give you value by just eating up other innings, and I
Right.
think that's what it's got to be for him right now.
Yeah, and one thing that is helpful, at least, is that the Cubs, I believe they're on a stretch here ending tonight where they have played 16 consecutive days.
Hmm.
Starting tonight, they have 3 off days in the next 8 days. They're off tomorrow, they're off on Monday, they're off next Thursday. So you can miss at least one Smiley start
Hmm.
just by virtue of scheduling working out in your favor. But then it gets tricky again, right? Because starting with the 18th. They play every day from the 18th through the 30th. They have an off day, and then they have a doubleheader against the Reds on September 1st. So
Hmm.
not a lot more breaks coming up, and obviously this is like in a world where you're assuming that people continue to stay healthy, which you can't assume. So
Right.
um, but it's yeah. So looking ahead a little bit, we've got one more tonight against the Mets. I believe tonight it's Hendricks for the Cubs, and then I
It is.
think Peterson for the Mets,
Hmm.
which sounds like a game you should win. Cookie Carrasco was actually pretty good last night, and Taillon was fantastic after the home run by Alonso, which there's no shame in
He
that. The
retired
guy's a
like
great hitter.
16 in a row, I want to
Yeah,
say, or something. Yeah, he was tremendous. This is exactly who you hope to get with
yeah,
Taillon. And then, looking ahead the next week or so, you have a weekend series at Toronto,
yep. I'll
which
be
that'll
there Friday.
oh cool, that's fun.
Yeah.
Cross that one off. And that'll be a tough series,
Hmm.
obviously. After that, you almost shouldn't lose for a week and a half. You are playing two games next week against the White Sox in the middle of the
Hmm.
week, and good Lord, has any team ever had worse vibes than this year's White Sox, who just aggressively suck across the board, have dealt
Hmm.
guys. Middleton, the reliever who was dealt to the Yankees, as soon as he got over there, he was like, "Oh, everything sucks over there. People are sleeping in the clubhouse. No one gives a shit. Everyone hates Yasmani Grandal." Like it's just like everyone's naming names. John Moncada doesn't give a shit. Eloy,
Yeah.
you never awake. Like
It's
it's
real, like, what is it, 2012 Red Sox when it came out, like, oh, everyone's just like hammered and
right, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. So the White Sox will win the World Series next year.
yeah.
And then it's Kansas City, historically bad team. They won like seven
Hmm.
in a row a week ago or something, which got him only slightly less historically bad. Then 3 games against Detroit and 4 games against Pittsburgh, who is tanked.
Hmm.
It's this is like you can really make up some distance if you just play to your own level right now. Like the Cubs don't have to
Right.
be hot to go something like 8-2.
Well, that's the thing, right? So before the trade deadline, there was that stretch where it was a bookend of 4 game series against the Cardinals, first home, then two at the White Sox, and then four at the Cardinals. And given the circumstances at that time with the trade deadline looming, I
Hmm.
think the feeling that we had was like minimum 7-3, but probably 8 or 9 wins here is what you need to not sell off. And they did that. They
Hmm.
had bookend losses, but they won 8 straight. These upcoming games after the Blue Jays, look, I mean, no one's ever rooting for like one of three, but the Blue Jays are a tough team. They're a very good
Hmm.
team. I'm bummed they did DFA Anthony Bass. I was looking forward to booing him, but
Yeah, he's gone.
it'll have to, I guess I'll have to go to I don't know, Korea or something to boo him.
Yeah, go to a
Um,
Lowe's and order a big bag of popcorn and see what he's up to.
but after this Blue Jay series, which if you win 2 of 3, fantastic, sweep, amazing. Win 1 of 3, you can live with it. 12 games, right? 12 games, and that's White Sox and Royals at home, and then 7 on the road against Detroit and Pittsburgh. In my mind, 8-4 is the worst possible record you should have there. I think anything short of winning 2/3 of those games is disappointing, because then after that, you are heading into a stretch that will quite possibly determine the division. You've got 3 games at home against Milwaukee, and then a 4 game set in 3 days against the Reds. Um, and then the Cubs don't have a divisional game again that matters until the final weekend of the season. So
Hmm.
it would be we've seen the Brewers ruin things for us before, and
Oh,
the
sure.
Brewers to me just scare me more than the Reds, just because they've been there and they have, I think, more of the pedigree. I think the Reds possibly like peaked too soon and also didn't do anything at the
I
deadline.
mean, the way they, yeah, doing nothing at the deadline and then getting the absolute stuffing beat out of them by the Cubs in games that really, really mattered, and watching that, like, I believe it was the Nick Senzel throw to Votto that they sort of both seemed to botch. To
Yeah,
me,
yeah,
felt like
yeah,
their
yeah,
Mancini moment, and I was like, oh, geez,
yeah.
this team's falling apart. And they may or may not, whatever. They're still very talented, but like you say, they're also with a lot of these young players. This is deeper, more games than they've probably played in
Hmm.
the season, too. And the Brewers just constantly are playing a little bit above what their talent level is. Oh, for years, they've clearly figured out some good
Hmm.
stuff between the managing and the front office there. And they called up Sal Frelick, a prospect who's just been great offensively, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what they needed. So yeah, if I was putting money on it, those would be the two
Hmm.
teams it would come down to in terms of players that we're going to see come up for the Cubs, like the shuffling we're going to do in the bullpen coming up. Brad Boxberger, remember him, is
Hmm.
also he just faced some batters the other day. I think he did a live BP session. So if he clearly wasn't really fully healthy earlier this year. And Nick Birdie is a guy who, that our triple digit friend who
Hmm.
came up and made a fun appearance after a long time off. Those might be guys we see coming up because Daniel Palencia has now hit a sort of rough stretch in the bullpen a little bit.
Yeah.
He's got tons of stuff. He might just be an up and down ride here a little bit, but um, those are those are some dudes we might see shuffling in these
Yeah, and
this
I feel like there's been a lot of speculation about PCA getting the call up in September, and I think people need to like hold their horses a little bit, like in the
Mhm.
same way that when Mervis came up, it was like, oh, I guess he'll just do exactly what he was doing in AAA, and everything
Right.
will work out forever. And we know that that's not the case, but I do think that having a guy like PCA on the team, just to first of all, just to get him around the big league team in a
Mhm.
pennant race, which presumably will the Cubs. I don't want to jinx anything, but theoretically the Cubs should be playing games that matter in September. So to just
Yeah.
have him around that, I think is invaluable. But also the speed that he brings, even if he's in as a defensive replacement or pinch runner sometimes, I think to
Hmm.
just like get a guy that young who's very much a centerpiece of your future around a playoff race is for me that's a no brainer.
Yeah, I mean it's possible. He just did a 440-foot bomb yesterday at AAA, and he
It's not bad.
no, he's his power has really exceeded what I thought he had available to him. So he's been great. But as you say, Mervis, by the way, is still killing it in AAA.
Hmm.
So there
Yeah.
in terms of, but I guess if he does if PCA does get called up, as you say, it's not really going to be for the bat. It would be defense and running, and getting on the bases at this point, and that is that you could see it happen. That's jumping a lot of levels in one year,
Yeah.
but
You know you would know better than I do, but I mean other than Nico, who obviously went straight from Double A to the Cubs and kind of never looked back.
mm,
Other than I can't think of anyone since maybe Chris Bryant who's like gone through the minors this quickly.
for the Cubs, yeah,
Yeah.
right,
Oh no,
like.
other teams sure, but I'm saying for the Cubs.
Yeah, no, I think Nico and probably Bryant before him. Schwarber moved really fast too. Ian Happ moved pretty fast, but outside, it's basically been those first rounders. Yeah, those were the good
Yeah.
first rounders. The Cubs actually also, last bit of news I have is Ryan Jensen was lost on waivers. He was a right-handed pitcher who the Cubs picked. It was a big surprise. He was not on the map
Mhm.
for a lot of people in the first round. Between 27 and 2020, the Cubs had 5 first-round picks: Brendan Little, Alex Lang, Nico, Ryan Jensen, and Ed Howard. Rough run. I still have
Mhm.
hope for Ed Howard, but Ed Howard was picked right before PCA was picked by the Mets that year. So
Yeah.
so that's all I got. At Away Games Pod. Adam, any parting thought?
No, but I'm going to City Field tonight. You gonna go?
TBD. Kyle Hendricks might tempt me. I got a lot going on, but I will make a game time decision. And if I do, it'll be for Kyle especially.
Yeah, I am particularly excited that I'm getting to see Kyle twice in one year, and I'm hoping that I don't know if they've announced it yet, but I'm hoping that Steele goes on Friday. It would seem to make sense that he would. He pitched
I
on
think
Sunday,
so.
and they have an off
Right.
day tomorrow, so I
Yeah.
would think that would be the case,
I
but
think so. Yeah.
yeah.
It's a good week of pitchers for you to see. Thanks for listening, everybody. At Away Games Pod everywhere. We'll catch you soon.